Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my November wrap ups for 2024 and I had a pretty good reading month. I'm actually surprised that now I'm like typing and like re-looking at all the books I've read. I actually was able to finish 8 books this month. One of them was an audiobook and two of them were shorter books, but I'm really surprised because I think for the past half year, every time I've been doing a monthly wrap ups, I'm saying I'm a bit behind on my reading goal, but I am definitely now on track to hit my reading goal of 52 books for this year, which is a book a week. So yeah, it was just a good month, I guess. I guess it makes sense too because I feel like November is where I live, especially is when it's kind of is the start of winter and the first snows fall. So you kind of just feel a bit cozy. I definitely am not as social and I just have more time to read inside. The first book I read was a book club book with my one friend. So I don't know if it's still a book club, it's just the two of us. But our goal is to read 12 books together in a year. So this is our 11th book. And this was The Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maehrer or Maehrer. And unfortunately, I gave it a 1 out of 5. It's just too bad because I don't really love giving low ratings because obviously someone, Hannah here, took the time to read this book, develop the story, the plot, the characters. But this book just wasn't for me. So basically, I will honestly have not finished it or DNF it if it wasn't a book club book. And also, I have a personal rule to always like finish books because you just never know how it might turn around. And also, like I said, someone did take the time to read it. It was vetted and published, etc. Um, but I think this book just wasn't for me because it was fantasy and romance, which is my two least favorite genres. So having them combined together is definitely a recipe for a disaster. Um, Basically, we meet this main character, and she becomes the assistant to the villain, hence the title of the book. And it basically talks about how she has this different view, this different insight of this villain, how this villain's like castle or stead has all these like employees and like people that work for him, and they're all people with like very good stories and that kind of stuff. So I can see that if you're someone that maybe has into romance and kind of into like, oh, like you should not relationship with your boss who happens to be evil, maybe this is a type of book for you. But it really just wasn't my alley, and unfortunately this is the first of I think 3 books. So for me, I'm not going to continue reading it. But having said that, if you do enjoy this book, if you read it, then there are more books for you to read. The next book I read, a friend gave it to me, so it was really nice because this book I have heard about but never really took the opportunity to read it. It's Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. I gave it an easy 5 of 5. I got quite emotional about it, and it was quite personal to me because I had an aunt that I was very close with, kind of like my second mom, that also passed away from ALS back in 2018. So this book, I don't know, it's just very personal, and to read Mitch and his relationship with Morrie, his professor, and Morrie's state of decline with the disease, but how he was so positive and how he has a big focus on the community and people around him. And this book was just a quick, and not easy. I mean, easy to read because it was short and like easy to consume, but it was hard to read because of the subject matter for me. But I think it's one of those books that like anyone can just pick up and read, and it kind of gives you like a check in on your life, and just be grateful, be present, and moments in life are fleeting, but also when you soak them in, they can be enough to last a lifetime. So this book is really great, and I really recommend everyone to read this book. The next book I read, I was also given. I went to a Palestinian movie screening a few months ago for Where the Olive Trees Weep, and I was given this book. So this book is called The 10 Myths About Israel by Ilan. I also gave this a 5 out of 5. To be honest, for me personally, I don't know a lot about the conflict in this region aside from what I hear from the news and hearing both sides of the story and having people that feel very passionate about either side. So this book was very good to just get a historical read of the region, and just learn that it's not since World War II, which I feel like everyone feels it came from, but also all the way back to 1800s. So I really enjoyed this book. I feel it's also a must read. It's definitely more historical, and also you will learn a lot. And it's just crazy because the conflict in Gaza, like this book was written in 2017, and it's saying that as of 2017, if this conflict cannot continue, and if it does, there will be no more Gaza. Yet here we are in 2024, almost like 8 years later, and it's still going on, and it's the same story. And I think like I remember university took a course about political geography, and we talked about Gaza and the West Bank, and like this is obviously an ongoing conflict that's been happening for decades, and there is no one solution. It's very complex, and I think the more you can read and learn about it, you can form your own opinion. The next book I read is a oldie. It's actually from 1995, I believe. So it's Relic by Douglas Preston and also Lincoln Child, a rare book that's written by two authors, or at least collaborated. And I also gave this a 5 out of 5. It's not something I would probably gravitate towards if I read the synopsis, but my coworker recommended it to me, and usually I just go into book blind because she really liked it. So this book is basically a good mix of mystery, thriller, science, biology, and also a really good plot, which I wouldn't say normally I would like acknowledge as a genre, but the plot really makes a difference. So this book is basically set in a museum in New York City. They have this exhibit that's going to launch. However, people are missing or getting killed in graphic ways. So trying to figure out like what's happening. And it was just really, I was on the edge of my seat. It was good action. I will say though, I felt like the reveal happened almost too early in the book, but with the epilogue at the end, it added a new set of eyes to the situation, and it made this book an easy 5. This is the first of, I think, 3 or 4 books in the series, so I would definitely give the second book a read. However, my friend, coworker said she actually did not really enjoy the second book, and she was just happy with reading the first book. So we'll see how the second book holds up. The next book, or I guess the next book I listened to was The Glass Castle by Jeannette Walls. I also gave it a 5 out of 5. I think it's weird to give a honest and sad memoir anything but a 5 because I don't want to take away from their life story and their experiences. And like honestly, I think most memoirs I've read I've given a 5 because it's just interesting to hear someone's like vulnerable, raw telling of their life. So this book I recommend because it's really good, but it's also really sad. And I think it was just so good and sad because Jeannette honestly had like shitty ass parents, and like she was so honest about it. And like there's so many times when I was like listening to her talk about her upbringing, she would say like, "Oh, I'm 12 at this point." I'm like, "Holy shit, I forget," because the way she talks about the experience and the story, I feel like she's lived several lifetimes of trauma with her parents. And this book was really good because it really just puts it in perspective like you can't choose your family, which is a blessing, but can also be a curse. So definitely worth listening to, but I think you have to be in the right mindset, or at least have a palate cleanser book on deck to listen to or read next. The next book I read was a book club book for work. It is We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. I unfortunately gave it a 2 out of 5. I really enjoyed another book in his series. I forgot what it was. It was one about like an old folks home where people like solve murders, something about a bullet. And that one I gave it like an easy 5. But I just guess I wasn't in the mood for a murder mystery who done it. But I also felt this book was a bit too convoluted. Like within the first few chapters, I feel like I met 20 characters, and there were just too many characters to keep track of. And I felt the characters were a bit too silly and too stereotypical, and they were just quirky for the sake of being quirky. But there was no reason to like them or see them change throughout the book. However, having said that, that's just my opinion, and I recognize that maybe I was just not in the mood for it because I have some coworkers that gave this book a 5. They really enjoyed it. So I do think like murder mysteries that have like a who done it and a cast of characters, you have to be in the right mood to read it, and it just wasn't for me. The next book I read was a also book club book. This was Hench by Natalie, Zina, Walschots. I gave this a 3 out of 5, and it was like it's a weird 3 out of 5. Like hear me out. It was it was a book. It was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the premise of it. Basically, the main character, she applies for a job to be a henchman of these bad guys. And in this story, you know, in our world, there's good guys, superheroes, and bad guys. And this book kind of talks about how maybe superheroes aren't always the good guys, and you know, it kind of like debunks that maybe superheroes actually cause more chaos and damage to society by trying to save the day every time. So this book had interesting perspective, and like I think it was a 3 and not a 4 or 5 because it was trying to do too many things at once. Like when the book started, I was kind of intrigued by following this protagonist who works as a henchman for this villain, and then we can see a bit of her origin story when she gets injured accidentally by a superhero, how she could become a villain. But then the story kind of devolves, like deteriorates, and I'm not really sure where it's going. And it is the first book in the series, so maybe it's just a lot of world building. And I am curious to read the second book, but yeah, this book was just wasn't good, wasn't bad. I would say it's worth reading, but it's not going to change your life. That's how I would rate it. The next book and last book I read, thanks for watching until this part of the video, is Only Sisters by Lilian Nattel, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. I came across this book because I was clearing out someone's basement and they just had this book. It looked interesting, and yeah, it was really good. So basically, the story is about two sisters, hence the title Only Sisters. And basically, there's one sister who lives in Toronto, Canada, and she's a doctor. And she has a sister that works in Africa, all over, doing like nursing and helping people in Africa with healthcare and that kind of stuff. And basically, the sister is like, "Hey, um, I might die, and if so, I don't want you to tell our mom that I'm dead. I want you to pretend that you're me. Here are all my logins and passwords, and I want you to just pretend that you're me until mom passes, because her mom also isn't doing well." So this book was really interesting because it's a silly premise, first of all, right? But it kind of talks about like the human relationships, the idea of relationships with your parents and your sisters, and just learning about someone in your life before and after their death and how your perception can change. Like, I felt like if I had to analyze the plot of this book, it's kind of silly and almost like you can't believe it. But then when you read the what the characters go through emotionally and the self reflection, it's a really good book because it humanizes. It sounds silly. It humanizes the human experience and how complex being a human can be, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Thank you for watching till the end of my November wrap ups. I had a pretty good month, and December is coming up, so I think all my book clubs are reading more like holiday themed books. So I feel like they won't be as a strong month for reading in terms of enjoyment or enjoyment of like well written books, but it will be entertaining at least. So I hope you guys have a good December, and I'll see you guys end of the month. Bye.